"You're embarrassing the family name, Charlie." My father Douglas said it right to my face while I stood there in my work clothes, grease still under my fingernails from the shop. I was 29 years old, and he was talking to me like I was 12. My brother Preston straightened his Stanford tie and smiled that perfect smile he'd been practicing since high school. "I'm Charlie Reynolds, 29. I fix cars for a living while my family runs Reynolds Automotive Empire, worth about $100 million. Been doing this for 8 years now, ever since I decided college wasn't for me. My dad never forgave me for that choice. Neither did Preston. The graduation party was supposed to celebrate Preston finishing his MBA. 4 years at Stanford, followed by 2 more getting his master's degree. The house was packed with family friends, business associates, and everyone who mattered in Birmingham's automotive scene. I stood in the back corner near the kitchen, nursing a beer and watching my family celebrate the golden boy. "Charles has always been more comfortable with his hands than his head," my dad announced to the crowd, gesturing toward me with his whiskey glass. "Preston here understands the business side, the future." Preston nodded graciously, accepting handshakes and congratulations. He looked the part, I'll give him that. Sharp suit, confident posture, all the right words. Everything my father wanted in a successor. "Preston will be taking over operations starting next month," my dad continued. "It's time for the next generation to lead Reynolds Automotive into the future." The applause was polite but enthusiastic. I took another sip of beer and stayed quiet. This was their moment, not mine. My cousin Tyler walked over, shaking his head. "That's rough, man. You've been working longer than Preston's even been out of school." "Dad knows what he's doing," I said. Didn't believe it, but what was the point of arguing? Still, 8 years in the shop, and Preston gets handed everything because he went to the right school. I watched my brother shake hands with investors and suppliers. He was saying something about innovation and market expansion. Big words that sounded impressive. The kind of talk that made my father beam with pride. What Preston didn't know was that I'd been developing something in my garage, something that could change everything. But my father had dismissed it as tinkering when I'd tried to explain it 6 months ago. "Let Preston handle the business," he'd said. "You stick to what you know." A stranger approached Preston near the fireplace. Tall guy in an expensive suit, talking quietly. They shook hands and the man glanced toward me. Our eyes met for a second across the room. Something about that look made my stomach tighten. I'd been fixing cars since I was 16, learning from my grandfather before he passed. While Preston studied for SATs and college applications, I was in the garage, understanding how engines worked, how systems connected, how things could be improved. My dad built Reynolds Automotive from a single dealership into a regional empire. 12 locations across Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia. Traditional combustion engines, classic American muscle, the kind of cars he'd grown up loving. He was proud of what he'd built, and he wanted Preston to expand it even further. "The automotive business is changing," Preston often said during family dinners. "We need to adapt or we'll be left behind." My dad would nod approvingly. That's exactly the kind of forward thinking we need. But Preston's forward thinking was all theoretical. Marketing strategies and financial projections. He'd never spent a day under the hood, never understood what actually made cars run. When customers had technical questions, he'd defer to the shop managers or change the subject. I'd tried to bridge that gap. 3 years ago, I'd started working on electric vehicle technology in my personal garage. Not just conversion kits, but ground-up design improvements, battery efficiency, motor placement, charging systems that could revolutionize the industry. I'd filed several patents quietly, paying for the legal work myself. When I'd finally worked up the courage to show my father the prototypes, he'd barely looked at them. "Electric cars are a fad," he'd said. "Our customers want real engines, power they can feel." Preston had been more diplomatic but equally dismissive. "The infrastructure isn't there yet. Maybe in 10 or 15 years. They didn't understand that I wasn't just building electric cars. I was solving the infrastructure problem. My charging system could retrofit existing gas stations with minimal investment. My battery design extended range by 30% over current technology. My motor configuration reduced manufacturing costs by 20%. But they saw grease-stained hands and assumed I couldn't think beyond carburetors and oil changes. The warning signs had been there for months. Fewer invitations to business meetings, strategic discussions happening without me, Preston getting introduced to key suppliers and partners while I stayed in the shop. My father had already decided the succession plan before tonight's announcement. My mother had pulled me aside last week, concerned. "Your father's just worried about the future of the company," she'd said. "Preston has the education." "And I have the experience," I'd replied. "Different kinds of experience." She meant well, but the message was clear. Book learning trumped practical knowledge in their world. An MBA was worth more than 8 years of actual work. The stranger was still talking to Preston, both of them glancing in my direction occasionally. Whatever they were discussing, it involved me somehow. I finished my beer and headed toward the kitchen, but the stranger intercepted me near the hallway. "Charlie Reynolds?" he asked, extending his hand. "James Mitchell," the stranger said, his grip firm and confident. "I've been hoping to meet you." I shook his hand, confused. "I don't think we've met." "No, but I know your work." He smiled and pulled a sealed envelope from his jacket pocket. "This is for you." "What is it?" "Your future," he said. "If you want it." I took the envelope, feeling its weight, official letterhead visible through the paper. "I don't understand." "Dove Wind Automotive Technologies," James said quietly. "We've been following your patent applications. Very impressive innovation." My heart stopped. Someone had actually looked at my work. Someone understood what I was building. "How did you—" "Your electric vehicle designs aren't just impressive, Charlie. They're revolutionary. The charging infrastructure alone could transform the entire industry." I glanced toward my family, still celebrating Preston's succession. My father was toasting his chosen heir while investors nodded approvingly. None of them had bothered to research what I'd been developing in my spare time. "What's in the envelope?" I asked. "An offer," James said. "Chief Technology Officer position, full development budget, equity stake that could make you very wealthy if we succeed." "I've never heard of Dove Wind." "We're new, well-funded, focused specifically on electric vehicle technology." He paused, studying my face. "We're also about to become Reynolds Automotive's biggest competitor." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I looked at my family again, seeing them differently now. My father dismissing my innovations while someone else recognized their value. Preston getting handed a company that might soon face serious competition from technology they'd rejected. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you understand both sides. The engineering and the practical application. Most developers create beautiful prototypes that can't be manufactured efficiently. Most manufacturers stick with proven technology and miss the innovations." James smiled. "You've solved both problems." I thought about 8 years of being overlooked. 8 years of my ideas being dismissed as tinkering. 8 years of watching my brother get credit for work he'd never done. "There's something else," James continued. "We're planning to establish our first manufacturing facility in Birmingham. Your local knowledge of suppliers and workers could be invaluable. You want me to compete against my own family. I want you to succeed," he said. "Your family made their choice about your value. Now you get to make yours." I looked at the envelope again. My name was typed on expensive letterhead, followed by Chief Technology Officer, in smaller print. My father's voice carried across the room. "Preston has the vision to take us into the future." The irony was almost painful. They were celebrating the future while holding an envelope that could redefine it. "Your time starts now," James said quietly, then walked away. I stood there for 10 minutes holding the envelope, watching my family celebrate Preston's inheritance of a company that might soon be fighting for survival against technology they'd rejected. Everything had changed, but nobody else knew it yet. I called James Mitchell the next morning from my apartment away from family ears. "I'm interested," I said, but I need to understand exactly what you're offering. Meet me for lunch. Highlands Bar and Grill, 1 p.m. The envelope contained everything James had promised. Chief Technology Officer position at Dovewind Automotive Technologies. Salary of $200,000 annually, plus equity that could be worth millions if the company succeeded. Full budget for research and development. Complete authority over engineering decisions. At lunch, James spread additional documents across the table. Financial projections, market analysis, technological roadmaps. Dovewind wasn't just well-funded. They were backed by venture capital firms that specialized in disrupting established industries. Your charging system patents alone are worth $50 million, James explained. Combined with your battery efficiency improvements and motor design, we're looking at technology that could dominate the electric vehicle market within 5 years. And you want to set up manufacturing in Birmingham, directly competing with Reynolds Automotive. Your father's traditional combustion engine focus makes them vulnerable to electric disruption. I thought about my family's reaction when they discovered what I was considering. This will destroy my relationship with my father. Your father already destroyed that relationship, James said. He chose Preston despite your superior qualifications. Now you're choosing yourself. That afternoon, I decided to test the waters at home. I found my father in his study, reviewing quarterly reports. Dad, I've been thinking about the electric vehicle market, I began. He looked up, frowning. Charlie, we've discussed this. Electric cars are still niche products. Our customers want reliable combustion engines. The technology has improved significantly. Range anxiety is becoming less of an issue, and charging infrastructure is expanding rapidly. Maybe in California or Seattle, not in Alabama. What if someone built charging stations throughout the Southeast, made electric vehicles practical for our customers? My father leaned back in his chair, clearly losing patience. Son, stick to what you know. Preston handles business strategy now. I'm trying to contribute to the business strategy. By fixing cars, that's your contribution. The dismissal was complete. 8 years of experience, multiple patents, revolutionary technology. None of it mattered because I hadn't gotten an MBA from Stanford. What if I told you someone was already planning to compete against us using electric vehicle technology? Then I'd say they're making a mistake. Our customers are loyal. They trust the Reynolds name. Loyalty only goes so far when the technology changes. My father stood up, clearly done with the conversation. Charlie, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but business decisions require more than enthusiasm. They require education, training, and strategic thinking. That's why Preston is taking over. I walked out knowing I'd given him a chance to listen. He'd chosen not to take it. That evening, Preston found me in my garage working on one of my prototype engines. Dad says you're worried about electric vehicle competition, he said, leaning against my workbench. I'm worried about being left behind. The market isn't ready for electric vehicles in our region. Our demographic still prefers traditional engines. What if the demographic changes? Preston smiled condescendingly. Charlie, market analysis isn't guesswork. I've studied consumer preferences, adoption curves, infrastructure requirements. Electric vehicles won't be viable in the Southeast for at least 10 years. You've studied reports. I've studied the actual technology. Technology doesn't matter if customers won't buy it. I looked at my prototype, advanced electric motor, improved battery configuration, innovative charging system. Everything Preston was dismissing could revolutionize the industry, but he couldn't see past his business school theories. What if customers would buy it if the technology was better? Charlie, you're thinking like a mechanic, not a businessman. You see cool technology and assume people want it. I analyze what people actually purchase. The conversation ended there. Preston had made his position clear. My technical knowledge was irrelevant to business decisions. I called James that night and accepted the offer. The contract negotiation took 2 weeks. During that time, I learned exactly how comprehensive Dovewind's plans were. We've been planning this for 18 months, James explained during our third meeting. Reynolds Automotive is perfectly positioned for disruption. Traditional technology, aging customer base, resistance to innovation. You've been targeting my family specifically? We've been targeting the market opportunity. Your family just happens to control the largest automotive operation in the region. James showed me market research that made my stomach drop. Electric vehicle adoption was accelerating faster than industry projections. Federal tax incentives were making electric cars more affordable. Corporate fleets were transitioning to electric to meet environmental mandates. Reynolds Automotive's resistance to electric technology will hurt them within 3 years, James continued. Maybe sooner if a well-funded competitor enters their market. And you want me to be that competitor. I want you to lead the technology development for that competitor. The deeper truth was worse than I'd realized. My family wasn't just missing an opportunity. They were actively positioning themselves for failure. While Preston focused on traditional marketing strategies, the entire automotive industry was shifting toward electric. There's something else, James said. Your patents aren't just valuable for our company. They're essential for anyone who wants to compete in electric vehicles. What do you mean? Your charging system design is so efficient that other manufacturers will need to license it or develop inferior alternatives. Your battery configuration is 30% more efficient than current industry standards. Your motor design reduces manufacturing costs while improving performance. I'd spent 3 years developing technology that could dominate the electric vehicle market, and my family had dismissed it as irrelevant tinkering. How many companies know about my patents? Several have inquired about licensing opportunities. Tesla reached out last month. Tesla, the company that had revolutionized electric vehicles, was interested in my work, but my own family wouldn't even look at the prototypes. What did you tell them? That the patents weren't available for licensing. We want exclusive access for Dovewind. I signed the contract that afternoon, officially becoming Chief Technology Officer of a company that would compete directly against Reynolds Automotive. The first team meeting revealed how serious Dovewind was about disrupting the southern automotive market. They'd hired manufacturing specialists from Ford and General Motors, marketing executives from successful electric vehicle companies, financial analysts who specialized in automotive disruption. Charlie's technology gives us a significant competitive advantage, James explained to the team. His charging system solves infrastructure problems that have limited electric vehicle adoption in suburban and rural markets. How quickly can we bring products to market? Asked Sarah Chen, our head of manufacturing. 18 months for our first production model, I said. 6 months for charging station deployment. The timeline was aggressive but achievable. More importantly, it would position Dovewind as a serious competitor before Reynolds Automotive could adapt. What about local market knowledge? Asked David Park, our marketing director. Charlie knows the regional dealers, suppliers, and customer preferences, James said. That knowledge is invaluable for our market entry strategy. I thought about my 8 years at Reynolds Automotive, building relationships with suppliers and understanding customer needs, knowledge that Preston had never bothered to develop despite his business education. There's one more element to consider, I said. Reynolds Automotive will be caught completely off guard. They don't believe electric vehicles are viable in this market. That gives us a significant first-mover advantage, David agreed. 6 months later, I was ready to revolutionize the southern electric vehicle market using technology my own family had rejected. Dovewind moved faster than anyone expected. Within 4 months, we'd established our Birmingham manufacturing facility in a converted warehouse 15 minutes from Reynolds Automotive's main dealership. The irony wasn't lost on me. My first production model rolled off the assembly line in January, a mid-size sedan with 300 miles of range and a price point competitive with premium combustion engine vehicles. More importantly, it could charge at stations we were installing throughout Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia. The charging infrastructure is the real innovation, I explained to our board of directors during the February presentation. Customers can drive from Birmingham to Atlanta and charge in 30 minutes instead of waiting hours. Our marketing campaign launched in March with a simple message: Southern Electric, Southern Values, Southern Innovation. We positioned Dovewind as a local company building advanced technology for Southern drivers. The response was immediate and positive. Pre-orders exceeded our manufacturing capacity within 2 weeks. Local media covered our story as a Birmingham success story. Business journals wrote about our innovative approach to electric vehicle adoption in traditional markets. Meanwhile, Reynolds Automotive continued focusing on traditional combustion engines. Preston had implemented several marketing initiatives to boost sales, but nothing addressed the growing electric vehicle interest. I kept my involvement with Dovewind quiet from my family, but news travels fast in Birmingham's business community. My cousin Tyler called in April. "Charlie, people are saying you're working for some electric car company. I'm exploring some opportunities. Dad says Reynolds Automotive is worried about electric vehicle competition. Some new company called Dovewind. Competition is healthy. Preston's been asking questions about you, wondering if you know anything about this Dovewind company." The investigation was inevitable. Birmingham's automotive community was small enough that my involvement would become obvious eventually. James called an emergency meeting when he learned Preston was asking questions. "How much does your family know?" he asked. "Nothing definitive, but they're getting suspicious. We need to accelerate our timeline. Market launch moves up to June." "That's aggressive. Your family will try to undermine us once they discover your involvement. We need to establish market presence before they can react." The next 2 months were intense. 16-hour days getting production ready, charging stations installed, dealer networks established. We launched with 5 dealership partners and 20 charging locations across 3 states. The market response was overwhelming. First-month sales exceeded our projections by 40%. Regional news outlets featured our success story. Industry analysts praised our innovative approach to electric vehicle infrastructure. Reynolds Automotive finally took notice in July. My father called, demanding to meet immediately. "Charlie, we need to talk," he said. "Something's come to my attention." "About what?" "About where you've been working for the past 8 months." The confrontation was inevitable. I'd spent 6 months building a company that would challenge everything my family had built. "I'll be at the office tomorrow morning," I said. "Be there at 9 a.m. Preston will be joining us." That night I reviewed everything we'd accomplished. Successful product launch, strong market acceptance, growing dealer network, expanding charging infrastructure. Technology my family had dismissed was revolutionizing their market. I also thought about the conversation we'd had 8 months ago, when my father announced Preston's succession, while dismissing my contributions as irrelevant. Tomorrow, they'd learn exactly how relevant my work had become. I arrived at Reynolds Automotive headquarters the next morning, carrying a folder containing market analysis, sales figures, and expansion plans. Evidence of everything they'd missed by rejecting electric vehicle technology. The time for hiding was over. My father and Preston were waiting in the conference room along with 3 other people I didn't recognize. Board members, most likely. "Sit down, Charlie," my father said, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. I took the chair across from them, placing my folder on the table. "We know about Dovewind," Preston said immediately. "We know you're their chief technology officer." "I am." "You've been competing against your own family," my father said, "using knowledge you gained working here." "I've been using technology I developed on my own time with my own resources." I opened my folder and spread the documents across the table. "Technology you dismissed as irrelevant." Preston leaned forward, scanning the papers. "Market share analysis?" "Dovewind captured 12% of the regional automotive market in our first month," I said. "We're projecting 25% by year-end." The blood drained from my father's face. "That's impossible. Electric vehicles aren't a fad anymore, Dad. They're the future. The future you said didn't exist." "You betrayed your family," my father said. "You betrayed me first." I pointed to the sales figures. "Every customer choosing Dovewind over Reynolds Automotive represents technology you refuse to consider." Preston was studying our expansion plans, his face growing pale. "Charging stations in 50 locations?" 67 as of yesterday. "We're solving the infrastructure problem you said made electric vehicles impractical." One of the board members spoke up. How long have you been planning this? Since the night you announced Preston's succession, I said, looking directly at my father. The night you called me an embarrassment to the family name. My father stood up, hands shaking with anger. You've destroyed everything I built. I've built something better, I replied. Something you could have been part of if you'd listened. Preston finally found his voice. We can adapt, incorporate electric vehicles into our product line. I pulled out the final document, patent registrations for my charging system, battery configuration, and motor design. Good luck. My technology is proprietary to Dovewind. Any competing system will be significantly inferior. The silence stretched for 30 seconds. They were beginning to understand the scope of what I'd accomplished. You've been planning this revenge for months, my father said. This isn't revenge, I said, standing up and gathering my papers. This is what happens when you dismiss innovation because it doesn't fit your preconceptions. 6 months later, Reynolds Automotive had lost 30% of their market share to Dovewind and other electric vehicle competitors entering the southern market. Their stock price dropped 40% as investors realized they'd missed the electric vehicle transition. Preston attempted to negotiate licensing deals for my technology, but I declined. He'd had opportunities to collaborate when we were family partners. Now we were competitors. My father stepped down as CEO in December, replaced by an outside executive with electric vehicle experience. The board had lost confidence in leadership that failed to recognize industry transformation. Preston kept his position but under significantly reduced authority. His Stanford MBA couldn't compensate for missing the most important technological shift in automotive history. Dovewind went public 18 months after launch, with a valuation exceeding $500 million. My equity stake made me wealthier than my family's entire automotive empire. I bought a house in Mountain Brook, 15 minutes from my childhood home. Sometimes I drove past Reynolds Automotive's headquarters, remembering the night they celebrated Preston's succession while dismissing my innovations. The automotive press wrote extensively about our success story. Local engineer revolutionizes electric vehicle market. From family disappointment to industry leader. How Southern innovation transformed electric vehicle adoption. My mother called occasionally, trying to bridge the family divide. I was polite but distant. They'd made their choice about my value. I'd made mine about theirs. Douglas and Preston faced ongoing industry humiliation as competitors consistently outperformed Reynolds Automotive using technology they'd dismissed, while their traditional business model struggled against multiple electric vehicle companies that followed Dovewind's successful market entry strategy. Preston's Stanford education proved inadequate for competing against practical innovation he'd failed to recognize, leading to continued losses in market share and investor confidence. Douglas's reputation in the automotive industry never recovered from overlooking revolutionary technology, developed by the son he'd called an embarrassment, while the family company's declining performance became a cautionary tale about missing technological transitions. The Reynolds name, once synonymous with automotive success, became associated with failure to adapt, while their former disappointment built an industry-leading company that defined the future they'd refused to embrace. I smiled while reviewing Dovewind's latest quarterly results, understanding that Douglas's dismissal had freed me to innovate without family limitations. Sometimes being called a disappointment by people who lack vision is actually confirmation that you're building something revolutionary. You destroyed your brother's life, Julian. Don't forget that. My name is Julian. I'm 25 years old and I've been hearing those words from my mother, Evelyn, for 11 years. Every time I ask about my savings account, every time I want to move out of their house in Spokane, Washington, every time I question why I'm still paying for Nathan's medical bills when I work 2 jobs and barely keep $20 in my wallet. I was 14 when Nathan got hurt. Car accident during a family camping trip. He was 17, had just gotten his license that summer. Our father Douglas was driving, Nathan was in the passenger seat, and I was in the back. One moment we were laughing about something stupid, the next moment we were spinning off the road. Nathan broke his back. 3 surgeries, wheelchair for 6 months. He recovered, mostly, but he walks with a limp now. From the first night in the hospital, they told me it was my fault. I was being loud, distracting Douglas while he drove. Nathan's future in football was over. His scholarship prospects were gone. The family was financially ruined because of my carelessness. I believed them. I was a kid. When your parents tell you something like that, you don't question it. For 11 years, I've worked to make it right. Started with lawn mowing at 15, then dishwashing, then construction work. Now I'm doing freight loading at Quenro Data during the day and stocking shelves at night. Every paycheck goes to Nathan's physical therapy, medical equipment, and what my parents call restitution for the life you took from him. My savings account has been empty for 3 years running. I haven't bought new clothes since high school. I drive a truck with 200,000 miles that breaks down twice a month. My mother handles all the bills because, as she puts it, you've proven you can't be trusted with money or decisions. But lately, something's been bothering me. Last month, I overheard Nathan talking to his girlfriend about applying for a job at the airport. He mentioned that his back feels fine now that the doctors cleared him for regular activity 2 years ago. When I asked my parents about it, they got quiet. Evelyn changed the subject. Douglas went outside to work in the garage. Then there was the conversation I wasn't supposed to hear last week. Nathan was arguing with them about something, saying he felt guilty watching me work myself to death over something that wasn't really my fault. The way he said it made me stop in the hallway. Not my fault. That was the first time anyone had said those words in 11 years. When I walked into the kitchen, they all went silent. Nathan looked uncomfortable. My parents looked angry. Nobody said anything for the rest of the night, but I could feel the tension. Something was wrong. Something bigger than I'd realized. The accident happened in October when I was a freshman in high school. We were driving to Lake Coeur d'Alene for a weekend camping trip, something we did every fall since I was little. Douglas was always a careful driver, never sped, always wore his seatbelt. He taught both Nathan and me to respect the road. I remember that day clearly because it had been raining hard. The forecast called for storms, but we decided to go anyway. Nathan was excited because he'd just made varsity football as a junior. I was annoying, probably the way 14-year-olds are. Asking too many questions about camping, talking about some movie I'd seen. The crash happened on Highway 95, about 20 miles outside Coeur d'Alene. I remember Douglas gripping the steering wheel tighter as the rain got heavier. I remember Nathan turning up the radio. I remember the truck in front of us hitting its brakes suddenly. Then we were sliding sideways, hitting the guardrail, and everything went dark. When I woke up in the hospital, Nathan was in surgery. Douglas had a concussion and some bruised ribs. Evelyn had driven up from Spokane in a panic. The first thing she said to me was, "Look what you've done." The first thing Douglas said was, "Your brother might never walk again because you couldn't sit still." I accepted their version of events because I was scared and guilty in 14. If they said I caused it, then I must have caused it. If they said I owed Nathan my life, then I owed him my life. Nathan never blamed me directly. He was always gentler about it, talking about accidents happen and we all have to live with consequences. But he never defended me either. When my parents took my part-time job money to pay for his therapy, he didn't object. When they used my college fund for his medical bills, he said it made sense. When they told people in town that I was working to take care of my brother after the accident I caused, he stayed quiet. The whole family dynamic shifted around Nathan's injury and my guilt. Every decision got filtered through what I owed him. Every opportunity I had got redirected toward making amends. When I graduated high school instead of going to college, I went straight to full-time work. When I got a promotion at the freight company, my parents negotiated with my supervisor to send part of my paycheck directly to them. I lived in the basement bedroom of their house, paying rent to my own parents, eating dinner alone while they discussed Nathan's future upstairs. I was part of the family but separate from it. Present but not equal. A contributor, but not a member. The cracks started showing about 6 months ago. Nathan began asking questions about why I was still paying for things his insurance covered. He started inviting me to hang out with his friends, something that hadn't happened since the accident. Last month, he told me he'd gotten a job offer in Seattle and was thinking about moving. When I mentioned it to my parents, they acted like Nathan had betrayed the family. The conversation that changed everything happened on a Thursday night in November. I came home from my second job around 11 p.m. and heard voices in the kitchen. Nathan was there with my parents, and they were having what sounded like an argument. "You can't keep doing this to him," Nathan was saying. "It's been 11 years. Julian's given up his entire life." "He owes us," Evelyn replied. "He owes you. That accident destroyed our family's future." "But the police report said—" "Don't bring up that report," Douglas interrupted. "We've been over this." Police report. I froze in the hallway. In 11 years, nobody had ever mentioned a police report. "Julian doesn't even know, does he?" Nathan asked. "About what really happened that night?" "What Julian knows is what he needs to know," Evelyn said. "He was responsible for distracting the driver. He's paying the consequences. That's justice." "That's not justice, Mom. That's lying." I heard a chair scrape against the floor. Footsteps. I slipped into the bathroom and waited until Nathan left and my parents went upstairs. Then I sat in the dark kitchen for 2 hours replaying the conversation. A police report existed. Nathan knew something I didn't know. My parents had been telling me one version of events, but there was another version. A version they didn't want me to see. The next morning I called in sick to work and drove to the Spokane Police Department. I told them I needed a copy of the accident report from October 2013. Highway 95 outside Coeur d'Alene. Single vehicle accident involving the Patterson family. The clerk handed me a 3-page document an hour later. I sat in my truck in the parking lot and read it twice. Primary cause of accident: driver error due to wet road conditions and reduced visibility. No evidence of passenger distraction. Weather conditions were severe with standing water reported on Highway 95 between miles 20-25. Vehicle hydroplaned during routine braking maneuver. No citations issued. No evidence of passenger distraction. Weather conditions were severe. Driver error due to wet road conditions. I read those lines over and over until they burned into my memory. For 11 years, my parents had told me I caused Nathan's accident by being a distraction. The police report said there was no evidence of passenger distraction. The accident was caused by weather and road conditions. I drove home slowly, thinking about every conversation, every guilt trip, every dollar I'd handed over to make amends for something I apparently didn't do. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw my parents' car and Nathan's car. Perfect timing. I walked into the house with the police report in my hand, ready to ask them why they'd been lying to me for 11 years, ready to find out what other truths they'd been hiding, ready to understand how much of my life I'd given away for nothing. I found them in the living room. My parents were on the couch, Nathan was in the recliner. They looked up when I walked in and I could see they weren't expecting me home from work. "I went to the police station today," I said, holding up the report. "Funny thing about this accident report. Says something different than what you've been telling me for 11 years. Douglas's face went pale. Evelyn immediately started talking. "Julian, you don't understand what you're reading. Those reports don't tell the whole story." "It says there was no evidence of passenger distraction," I interrupted. "It says the accident was caused by weather conditions and driver error, not by me being loud in the back seat." Nathan looked confused. "You got the actual police report?" "Yeah. Want to hear what it really says?" I started reading directly from the document. Primary cause of accident: driver error due to wet road conditions and reduced visibility. Weather conditions were severe with standing water reported on Highway 95. Vehicle hydroplaned during routine braking maneuver. No citations issued. I looked up at my parents. No mentions of distracting passengers anywhere in this report. Douglas stood up slowly. "You need to understand that police reports don't capture everything that happens in a vehicle. We were there. We know what really happened." So the police officer was wrong. The investigating officer who interviewed all of us at the hospital was wrong about what caused the accident. "Those officers don't know about family dynamics," Evelyn said. "They don't know how you were acting that day, We protected you by not telling them the full truth about your behavior. I stared at her. You protected me by lying to the police? We protected you by handling it within the family instead of having it on an official record, Douglas said. You should be grateful. Nathan was reading over my shoulder now. This says Dad hydroplaned on standing water. It doesn't mention Julian at all. Nathan, you were unconscious for most of the investigation, Evelyn said quickly. You don't remember the details. But I remember the drive, Nathan said slowly. I remember it was raining hard. I remember Dad saying the roads were getting dangerous. I don't remember Julian doing anything unusual. I felt something shifting in the room. For the first time in 11 years, someone besides me was questioning my parents' version of events. This doesn't matter, Douglas said, his voice getting louder. Julian has been making things right. He's been taking responsibility. That's what matters. Making things right for something I didn't do? You don't know what you did or didn't do, Evelyn snapped. You were 14 and in shock. We're the adults. We know what happened. The police officer was an adult too, and he wrote down what actually happened. Get out, Douglas said suddenly. Get out of this house. You're being disrespectful and ungrateful after everything we've sacrificed for this family. I looked at Nathan, hoping he'd say something, but he was staring at the floor, the same pattern as always. When things got heated, Nathan retreated. When my parents made demands, Nathan stayed quiet. If I leave, I'm not coming back, I said. Good, Evelyn said. Maybe living on your own will teach you some appreciation for what your family has done for you. I walked upstairs, packed my clothes into 2 garbage bags and loaded them into my truck. When I came back downstairs, my parents were in the kitchen with Nathan, talking in low voices. They stopped when they saw me. I'm staying at a motel for now, I said. But this conversation isn't over. I want to know why you've been lying to me for 11 years. We haven't been lying, Douglas said. We've been protecting this family. I left without saying goodbye. Drove to the Travelodge on Division Street and paid for 3 nights with money I'd been saving for Nathan's next round of physical therapy. Sat on the bed in that small room and realized I'd been living someone else's version of my life since I was 14 years old. But I also realized that walking away wasn't enough. I needed to understand how deep this went. I needed to know what else they'd been hiding. I called Nathan the next morning. He agreed to meet me at a coffee shop downtown, away from our parents. I've been thinking about that police report all night, he said when he sat down. Some things aren't adding up. Like what? Like the fact that I've been getting disability insurance payments for 3 years that I don't need anymore. Like the fact that my medical bills have been covered by insurance since 2015, but you're still paying out of pocket for things. Like the fact that Mom and Dad have been telling people you're supporting me financially when I've had a job for 2 years. I set down my coffee. What are you talking about? I've been working at the airport since 2023, making good money. My back is fine. The doctors cleared me for full activity in 2022. But Mom and Dad keep telling everyone you're still paying for my care because of the accident you caused. They told me you needed ongoing therapy. I haven't needed therapy since 2022. I go to a regular gym now. Nathan pulled out his phone and showed me a bank statement. Look at this. I've been getting disability payments that I tried to refuse, but Mom insisted I keep accepting them and give them to her to manage. She said it was insurance money that the family deserved because of what happened. I stared at the numbers on his phone. Thousands of dollars every month going to our parents. Nathan, I've been working 2 jobs to pay for your medical care. I've been living in their basement paying them rent, giving them most of my paycheck for bills they said were related to your accident. His face went white. Julian, I had no idea. I thought you were just helping out while you saved money for your own place. I didn't know they were taking everything. How much money are we talking about? He scrolled through his banking app. I've given them about $40,000 over the past 3 years. Money I didn't think I should be getting anyway, but they said it was family money. I did quick math in my head. My parents had been taking roughly $1,500 a month from me for Nathan's care, plus $800 in rent, plus whatever they could get from my savings account when I had one. Nathan had been giving them over $1,000 a month in disability payments he didn't need. They've been collecting money from both of us, I said. Telling you that you should give them your disability payments, telling me that I need to pay for your care. Double dipping. But why? What have they been spending the money on? I thought about their new kitchen renovation last year. The trip to Arizona they took in the spring. Douglas's new truck. Things they said they were able to afford because they were being careful with family finances. I think they've been using your accident to fund their lifestyle for 11 years, I said. And they've been using my guilt about causing it to make sure I never questioned where the money was going. Nathan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Julian, I need to tell you something. I've always remembered that day clearly. You weren't doing anything wrong in the back seat. Dad was driving too fast for the conditions, and when he hit standing water, he overcorrected. The car hydroplaned. It wasn't your fault. You've known this the whole time? I've known you didn't cause it. But I thought Mom and Dad were just trying to help you process guilt that wasn't rational. I didn't realize they were using that guilt to control your life. I felt something break loose in my chest. 11 years of carrying weight that was never mine to carry. We need to confront them, I said. Together? Together. We drove to the house that afternoon. I'd spent the morning gathering evidence, bank statements, the police report, records of payments I'd made over the years, and Nathan's disability documentation. We weren't going in angry. We were going in prepared. My parents were in the kitchen when we walked in. Evelyn looked surprised to see us together. Julian, we thought you were staying at that motel until you came to your senses, she said. I've come to my senses, I said, setting the folder of documents on the table. That's why we're here. Nathan, you don't need to be involved in this, Douglas said. This is between Julian and us. Actually, Dad, I'm very involved in this, Nathan said, because it turns out you've been lying to both of us. I opened the folder and pulled out Nathan's bank statements. Nathan's been giving you over $1,000 a month in disability payments, payments for an injury that doesn't affect him anymore. Meanwhile, you've been telling me that I need to pay for his ongoing medical care that he doesn't actually need. Evelyn's face flushed. That money is family money. Nathan's accident affected all of us financially. No, I said, pulling out the police report. Nathan's accident was caused by weather conditions and driver error, not by anything I did. You've known that for 11 years because you had this report, but you lied to me about what it said. We never showed you that report because we didn't want you to feel like you could shirk responsibility, Douglas said. Responsibility for what? For an accident that the police determined I didn't cause? Nathan pulled out his medical records. And I haven't needed ongoing care for 3 years. My doctor cleared me for normal activity in 2022. You've been taking Julian's money for medical expenses that don't exist. You don't understand the long-term costs of an injury like that, Evelyn said, but her voice was getting shaky. I understand that you've been committing fraud, I said. Taking disability payments that Nathan doesn't need, taking money from me for medical expenses that don't exist, all while lying about the cause of the accident. Douglas stood up. You're both being ungrateful. This family has been through trauma. We've been trying to hold things together. By lying and stealing? By making sure everyone took responsibility for their actions. Whose actions? Nathan asked. Because according to this police report, the only person who made a mistake that day was Dad. He was driving too fast for wet road conditions. The room went quiet. Douglas sat back down slowly. The truth is, I continued, you've been using Nathan's accident to control my life and fund your lifestyle for 11 years. You convinced a 14-year-old kid that he destroyed his brother's future, then used that guilt to justify taking everything he earned. Julian, you're misunderstanding. I'm understanding perfectly for the first time in 11 years, I interrupted. You hid evidence that would have cleared me because keeping me guilty was more profitable than telling the truth. Evelyn started crying. We did what we thought was best for the family. You did what was best for yourselves, Nathan said, and you destroyed Julian's life to do it. Douglas looked at both of us, and I could see him calculating his next move. But there was no next move. We had documents, we had evidence, we had the truth. So here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to pay back every dollar you took from both of us, and you're going to explain to everyone who's heard your version of this story what really happened that day. The real confrontation was just beginning. Douglas tried one last manipulation. If you do this, you'll destroy this family. Is that what you want? You already destroyed this family 11 years ago when you decided to build it on lies, I said, placing the police report directly in front of him. The difference is, now I'm done being the only one paying the price for it. Evelyn was sobbing now. We can work this out, we can make payments back to you, we can explain things to people. You're going to do more than that, Nathan said. You're going to call Julian's bank and authorize him to see every transaction from the accounts you've been managing in his name. You're going to provide documentation for every medical expense you claimed Julian needed to pay for. And you're going to return Nathan's disability payments that he never should have given you, I added, because taking those payments under false pretenses is insurance fraud. Douglas's face went gray. You can't prove that we did anything illegal. I pulled out a recording device. Actually, I can because I've been recording this conversation. You just admitted that you hid the police report from me because you wanted me to feel responsible. You admitted that you took Nathan's disability money. You admitted that you've been lying about medical expenses. Recording your own parents, Evelyn whispered. How could you? The same way you could lie to your own son for 11 years, I replied. The same way you could steal his entire adult life based on something you knew he didn't do. Nathan stood up. I'm moving to Seattle next month. I already have an apartment lined up. Julian, you should come with me. Start over somewhere they can't manipulate you. I looked at my parents sitting at their kitchen table, finally facing the consequences of 11 years of lies. They looked smaller somehow, older, like people who had been caught doing something they always knew was wrong. The money you stole from both of us, I said. We want it back, all of it. You have 30 days. We don't have that kind of money, Douglas said. Then you'll sell whatever you bought with it. The kitchen renovation, the truck, the Arizona trips, whatever it takes. Douglas and Evelyn never recovered from the exposure of their 11-year scheme. When I told the story to our extended family, their reputation crumbled overnight. Cousins who had praised them for handling Julian's guilt responsibly stopped speaking to them. Church members who had heard their version of the accident confronted them about lying in their community. Douglas's brother, who had loaned them money years earlier based on their story about struggling with medical bills, demanded immediate repayment when he learned the truth. The insurance company launched an investigation when Nathan reported that he'd been receiving disability payments he didn't qualify for, and his parents had been encouraging him to continue collecting them. Evelyn had to hire a lawyer when the state began looking into financial elder abuse charges. Their comfortable retirement disappeared into legal fees and mandatory restitution payments. Within 6 months, they'd sold their house to pay back what they owed Nathan and me. They moved into a small apartment across town, where Douglas took a part-time job at 63 years old to cover their basic expenses. Their social circle evaporated when people learned how they'd manipulated their son's trauma for financial gain. Nathan and I drove to Seattle together in January. He started work at SeaTac Airport, and I got hired by a shipping company that paid me more in 1 month than my parents had let me keep in 3. We rented a 2-bedroom apartment near Green Lake, and for the first time since I was 14, I kept my own paycheck. I opened my own bank account, bought my first new clothes in years, and started saving money for things I wanted, instead of paying for lies I'd been told. Nathan and I became friends again, maybe for the first time since the accident. Sometimes healing means discovering that the weight you've been carrying was never yours to begin with.